That's right. You're listening to another episode of the co-main event Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. I'm Chad Dundas. That's Ben Folks. We're both longtime MMA journalists, and for the last 14 years, we've been meeting here every week to break down all the action in the wild, weird, and occasionally wonderful world of mixed martial arts. Ben, it is officially episode 700
What?
of the co-main event, and that is just these numbered shows. That doesn't even count what we're doing over on the Patreon page, where we are doing 3-4 shows a week. It doesn't count various special episodes we've done in this feed. It doesn't count live watch parties, etc., etc. We've been doing this shit for a long time, but this it struck me, this show, it's kind of like the CME's version of a premium live event.
Yeah. It doesn't count our fight nights, our fight for the troops, our CME on versus that kind of tier of programming.
That's right. If the kids listening at home notice a little bit of difference in your audio, you are on the road this week. You're out there in the Big Apple, New York City, attending to some important dance business, from what I understand.
I am not attending to any important dance business. I am taking advantage of the free hotel room that comes along with the important dance business. I am hanging out, as they say.
Yeah. What part of New York are you in?
I'm in the Lower East Side.
Okay. All right. Watch out for street ruffians.
There's plenty of street ruffians all over here, man. I was really upset because looking at my flight schedule, I was like, oh, hell yeah, I'll land in New York in time to go basically straight to a bar and watch the U.S. play Belgium in the World Cup. And then they delayed my flight so that I missed the entire thing, landed, got some texts, come to find out, maybe it wasn't such a bad thing that I didn't get to watch this one.
Yeah, pretty much got worn around the pitch like a button by Belgium, including at least one very embarrassing goal. So I don't know, perhaps an ignoble exit for the U.S. team from the World Cup. But, going from the conversation that we had with my brother over on the Patreon page in our World Cup preview episode, which was great, by the way, it kind of seems like this was sort of what the expectations were, right? For this American team, that people thought they're not great, they may not make a deep run. Then I think they raised expectations a little bit with their early performances.
That's where they fucked up.
Coming back down to earth, maybe in the knockout stage, was not that big of a surprise.
And as I think we might end up discussing a little bit in listener mail, we had to get all modern day America in it and introduce an element of corruption that for no real gain whatsoever, other than to make us look fucking stupid.
Well, speaking of premium live events, we've got one of the most premiumly going down this weekend. UFC 329 at T-Mobile Arena down there in Las Vegas. Conor McGregor makes his return to the Octagon against Max Holloway. Ben, it is a rematch 13 years in the making. These guys fought way back in the earliest parts of both of their UFC careers, and now under incredibly different circumstances, they are going to do it again, brother. And Conor McGregor went out there and beat Max Holloway in their original fight way back at UFC Fight Night Shogun versus Sonnen on August 17th, 2013. So we're going to renew that one, although very few similarities, I think, perhaps, between that fight and this one. Obviously, as I just said, it's Conor's return. I guess we can talk about the stakes for him coming up, but here he is with Max Holloway, who I think is a big time opponent. We can all agree for Conor McGregor in his return. And I think what we're all expecting here is maybe a fight that decides which matters more in this particular matchup, power or pace, I think is kind of what we expect here. But I guess from your angle with McGregor coming back, What are you looking to see? What are you curious about? And what are your expectations, I guess?
This is a weird one, man. This is a weird one just to know how to feel about it. Because when you step back and you try to see how this looks to people outside the MMA bubble,
Hmm.
you go, this is going to be a big one, right? Because any
Yeah.
Conor McGregor fight at this point is a big one. It's not going to be big on the level that Conor McGregor fights used to be. And it's not going to be the way Conor McGregor fights used to be, in that we could all just sort of be like, all right, it's superstar time. We get to feel like a sport that the rest of the world actually cares about. And that's good vibes. The vibes is different now.
Yeah.
And the vibes, especially, it's sort of like, at least here, you tell me if you think this is correct. What I feel coming back from the mainstream sports world is a little bit of, oh yeah, Conor McGregor. I remember that guy being a huge star. Also feel like I remember vaguely hearing some bad stuff about him. Even if people don't know all the details, people, it seems, are aware that he is not an uncomplicated figure. And there's a sense of like, oh yeah, he's still around. And the
Hmm.
thing that I get asked from people is basically something along the lines of, is he still good though?
Yeah.
And I feel like I don't know how to answer that, because I feel like you're asking two different questions. Is he still good at fighting? Which we're going to find out.
Yep.
That's why they have these fights. But also, it seems like they're asking, is he still a person who matters in this sport the
Yeah.
way he used to? And that's the part where you're like, yes, with a but, you know?
Hmm.
It's not going to be the same. And this is a conversation I was kind of having with Pizzi, who was remembering those golden age days where it felt like all of Ireland shut down. Half the country got on a plane, went to Vegas to actually see these fights. It's not going to be that anymore. It's not
Yeah.
2016 anymore. It's got to be different. And yet it does still feel like we're all kind of sitting around being like, but different how? We're
Hmm.
waiting to find out.
Yeah, I think, well, that's a multifaceted question, but I think that like anybody who is in the mainstream and yet MMA adjacent or MMA curious enough to remember who Conor McGregor is probably has heard about his personal troubles, maybe kind of at arm's length, depending on how close they keep their ear to the ground of the sports world. I could also see just a large percentage of that population, or the population of people who kind of know who Conor McGregor is or was, either not knowing or sort of it not being top of mind for them, or them just like not caring, because we've seen time and time again with sports figures like this that regardless of the ugly nature of the sexual assault conviction or the numerous allegations and everything else, fans are going to show up to watch regardless. And it seems like in the MMA media, for the most part, with some notable exceptions, we are just kind of going to pretend that this is just a big Conor McGregor return fight week, right? And especially the UFC is obviously going to do that. Um, so it remains to be seen. It's only Tuesday here, and so it remains to be seen how the rest of the week plays out and whether or not more attention is given to his numerous foibles and crimes. We'll just have to wait and see. But
Okay, foibles and crimes.
yeah,
Those are different things.
yeah. Well, some of them are foibles. Some of them are smashing a guy's phone outside the Fontainebleau.
That seems like
Some
wholesome now, doesn't it? When you
some
think
of
back,
them are incredibly ugly, violent assaults.
yeah, it's like smashing a dude's phone who tried to take a picture of him at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Oh, to be young and carefree again.
Would
When that
that were the
seemed,
worst it got.
yeah. Or even just like being like celebrity bad behavior of just like, even when he's punching people in nightclubs and shit, where you're just like, if only that was as bad as it got. Because it's like, this is one of the things that I think is weird, looking at how some of the MMA media people are going about this. On one hand, I get it. You don't want to do Conor McGregor rape week.
Yeah.
You don't want that to be the entire conversation. You you know that the fans, like a lot of fans, would have a bad reaction to that.
Yeah.
They'd be like, "Oh, why are you guys being so negative?" Like they want to kind of turn off their brains and enjoy big fight vibes that
Right.
Conor McGregor can bring.
Right.
And yet at the same time, I see a lot of people talking around it in ways where they're like, "He's been through some stuff. What a great comeback story. Here he
Mm,
comes." Like, like he's put this stuff behind him, and you're like, first of all, you don't know that. It's a comeback story if you come back and you win. If you come back and you look like garbage, it's not really much of a comeback story. But also, they're talking about it almost as if this was stuff that was done to him,
mm-hmm.
or as if this was just like, hey, life has some ups and downs. Like, he didn't get cancer. He didn't deal with, like, it's not like, oh, his mom died in a car accident and he had to go through some it's he didn't go through just like the stuff life is going to throw at you and it's difficult and you got to learn to deal with it. He went through him fucking up.
Yeah.
He destroyed it was self-destruction. He did this, and he did, like, there are people out there dealing with big stuff because of what Conor McGregor did to them, and
Mm-hmm.
then we're somehow acting like it's just like, hey man, he's just dealt with how the pitfalls of fame is how I've seen it put it, and it's like, no man, that is not pitfalls of fame, unless your concept is that, well, fame might make you fuck around and rape somebody, man. That's just the way it goes when you get famous. And like that, I think that's weird. That is a
Yeah.
weird way for people to go about it. And it's like they're trying to acknowledge some big stuff has happened. The way he is perceived has changed. The way he is going to have to react to that difference in perception has changed. But they don't want to actually name it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and I guess we should make the point that this is not a phenomenon that is exclusive to the MMA or combat sports community. This is kind of a sports wide uh, attitude sometimes towards various terrible transgressions that athletes make. A lot of times we see them welcome back to the field or the cage, as the case may be, without a ton of responsibility or focus on those outside things that they've done. But we seem like we're going to do it for Conor. You mentioned a second ago that this wasn't going to be a normal like Conor McGregor fight week, that there is perhaps the notion that his star has fallen considerably, and I don't disagree with that. I think that's probably true, especially I think in the MMA bubble and probably among casual fans. We don't have the expectations for him that we once did. But just with this being on Paramount Plus and now being quote unquote for free, along with your subscription, and the fact that it was announced yesterday that we're at least going to do the weigh-ins and maybe some manner of special broadcast on CBS itself leading into this thing. Despite all of these things, and again, I am always surprised at the public or the fight sports community's ability to turn out in droves for someone who is obviously past their prime. Seems like we do it all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but like I think that there's a possibility, at least, that more people watch this Conor McGregor fight than many of his other UFC fights, just because of the economics of the thing.
Yeah, availability wise, you've made it a lot easier on people. And that is something that, like, I've said this before, so ever since the UFC moved to Paramount, this should be a great time for you to pick up fans, especially with something like this, where people were like, okay, I've heard of Conor McGregor, I've heard that he's a big deal. And if you found out, like, okay, 9.99, whatever it is to pay to sign up for the streaming service, and you can check it out, why not?
Yeah.
That's a pretty low bar to clear for them. The problem, as always, is getting the word out. Hey, there's this fight happening on Saturday night. Stay home and watch it. Stay home, sign up for this thing and watch it, and managing to capture and hold on to people's attention for long enough.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Maybe coming up in the second part of the show after listener mail, we can talk a little bit about what we're actually going to see in the cage from both of these guys, which I think goes a long way to answering, or will be the thing that answers your questions. Is Conor McGregor still good though, and can he continue to be a contributing force in this sport. But I think in like a more intangible way, that brings up the question of kind of like what's at stake for him here, which again, just like his return, finds him, I think, in kind of a weird situation, because if you beat Max Holloway, that's huge for
Yeah.
you. If you're Conor McGregor, that's absolutely huge. You are quote unquote back in terms of being in the mix in theoretically in the UFC, certainly in MMA itself. That would be, I'm uncomfortable calling it a comeback since because of the things that we talked about already, but it would certainly be like a huge return. It would be a huge victorious return for him that I think would reinvigorate his spirits in a lot of ways in this sport. And there's also the question of like what the UFC would do with that, right? Because he's a huge star, he's going to attract lots of viewers, he's going to make them a lot of money, and yet he's got 2 fights left on his contract, as far as we know, this one and then one more. So if you're the UFC and Conor wins, let's say, are you willing to boost him into sort of a title shot against Justin Gaethje or whoever the champion has to be or happens to be at the time? Or are you a little bit more hesitant and you're sort of like, well, let's let Conor finish out his contract in what would be a big fight, but also not one that is going to, we're not going to wrap the belt around his waist, right, on the way out the door, kind of.
Right. I mean, it seems like that would be entirely dependent on how contract extension talks go. Like,
Right.
does he want to stick around? Because if he wanted to stick around and for a reasonable amount of money, and by reasonable, I mean something close to whatever the UFC is paying him now, then I think that the UFC would be like, all right, we'll take this ride again. Paramount would like it, I'm sure. They need people to sign up for this shit. So let's see what we can squeeze out of him in the time he's got left. I was interested when he was talking about the deal to come back now. He said something along the lines of, I got less than what I think is my value from the UFC, but they ended up paying more than they wanted to pay. And so, that old saying about that's how you know that it's a successful negotiation is everybody was a little bit unhappy.
Yeah.
And we have wondered in the past, especially about in this Paramount era, you don't have pay-per-views to sell anymore. You want to pick up some subscribers. Paramount needs to pick up some subscribers if they want to have any hope of not losing their ass on this deal. So there is an incentive there, but is it enough of an incentive? If you're the UFC, if Conor McGregor comes back, beats Max Holloway, and is just like, I'm ready for another title run, let's go ahead. I'll sign a new contract, but it's got to be huge. If you're the UFC, are you going, well, I don't know if we really need that. Plus, he's like 38. So how many, and they might be at that time remembering, oh yeah, it's kind of a pain in the ass to deal with this guy. It's a lot easier to deal with guys like Mauricio Hoofy, who's just happy to be here, and like these young guys who are still hungry and coming up in the sport. And there's got to be a point for the UFC where they're like, the rewards for us are not worth this upfront cost of Conor McGregor. We've learned the way we've made it so that we are making more money every single quarter, and we get to report to the shareholders that it's another bang up quarter for us, is that we've managed costs. And Conor McGregor going to cost a lot more to come in here and fight maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, and at any point might just get himself thrown in the hoosegow, might at any point just disappear onto a yacht for the next 3 years. You just don't know what you're going to get from him. And so I think for the UFC, like, that would have to work into the calculations. And if he doesn't sign a contract extension after this one, then you're right. There's no way you risk putting him in a title fight, especially against Justin Gaethje. It's one of the more winnable possible title fights that you could imagine for him, especially if he looks good enough to beat Max Holloway here. I think, but then it's like, okay, if you're going to just give him one last fight out the door, do you do the UFC classic move of giving him just a bad matchup against a young guy who's going to wreck him and say, you don't want that one? All right, well then we'll call you in 6 more months and we'll give you one you like even less. And that, I think, would be, because it's like, who do you have him fight? You got to have him fight somebody big. You can't have a Conor. You can't do him like he's Andrei Arlovsky and we just sort of like bury him on the prelims and act like he was never here. that's not going to work here. So you'd have to come up with some. I mean, if I'm Michael Chandler, maybe I'm thinking that's the best route that I possibly have.
Yeah, that could well be. It's, and we could make the argument they already have given him an incredibly tough matchup just in Max Holloway. And we'll talk about that coming up in a little bit. But remember, you're listening to the Co-Main Event podcast proper. This show drops every Monday afternoon, for the most part, for free in your timelines and podcast libraries. And if you like what we do, first off, man, you can go subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. You can also consider leaving us one of those sweet 5-star reviews over at your podcast app of choice. Those things really do help us out a lot. You could follow us over on YouTube at Co-Main Event Podcast. You could hit us up on Facebook, Co-Main Event Podcast, and you can follow us on the grams at CME If You Nasty. Or if you really want to be a friend of the show, you could sign up to join the Patreon over at patreon.com/co-main event. There is a lot of cool stuff happening over there all the time. We're posting extra podcasts almost every day of the week. We just did the return of our movie club podcast where we talked about The French Connection. We're going to have another one of those coming up this month. We got the live chat, which is entirely driven by listener questions. We got the Power Hour, which is a full hour of curated MMA talk just for the true heads out there. And of course, my personal favorite, Doing the Damn Thing, where we talk about stuff other than MMA. It's fun. We think you'll like it. Plus, we got live watch parties. We brought the movie club back, as I said. The official Discord message board is out there where they're talking about fights and a lot of other stuff all the time. Sign up to join the team. We think it's the best deal in all of MMA over at patreon.com/co-main event. We'd love to see you over there. We do have a good time.
Yes, we do. I'm excited for this week's or this month's movie club where we're doing Apocalypse.
Yeah, we're gonna get the voting for that up real soon. All right, like we always do about this time, let's do a little bit of listener mail.
Listener mail.
Thanks to everybody, by the way, who popped over to the new comainevent.com to help us out and check out our new email form to make sure that it worked. Appreciate that support. It did work. And so we got a fair amount of listener mail this week. We're going to go through some of it here as much as we can. The first one came from Long Live Gunu, who wrote in to say, did any of you guys catch that Puff Piece PR rehab video featuring Conor McGregor that aired during UFC Countdown? Let's just say it paints McGregor as a beloved businessman, loved by many and all, and still cherished as part of his community. Needless to say, we all know this is very different from reality, but nonetheless, what were your thoughts? I did not see this. I gotta admit that these days, having been around this sport for as long as I have, I don't consume a lot of UFC produced media because you kind of know what you're getting there.
Yeah,
but again,
state TV.
We talked about this kind of extensively during the first half of the show. It is no surprise, right, that at least the UFC is going to show up and, if anything, make only very veiled references to something that Conor McGregor had to get right in his life.
Yeah, okay. I hear a lot about this from our guy Pizzi, who, is Irish, is making the trip from Dublin to Las Vegas for this one. Has covered Conor McGregor basically his entire career, and he talks a lot about how he has seen very differently over there in Ireland. Now, Pizzi sent me a Instagram video where it's like these people from Meanwhile in Ireland, an Instagram account, and they do sort of like man on the street interviews. And they were down there in the what I have experienced as the fun downtown vibrant area of Galway, where you can just wander up and down the street, Chad, drinking pints, getting yourself into some fun frivolity.
The crack, so to speak.
You could have the crack down there. I had the crack down there. Went to a drag show hosted by a drag queen billed as coming from the Scottish Loch, and it was pretty rad. And anyway, they're going up and down the street talking to people, being like, will you be supporting Conor McGregor in his upcoming fight? And there was like an outlier guy who was like, yeah, I'll be supporting. Everybody else was just like, nah, no. And they were like very, casual about it. One of the guys was just like, I used to like him when he first came up, but now I think he became a bit of a bellend. And the guy was like, would you be hoping that he loses then? And the guy was like, Yeah. I'd be saying I hope he gets the face boxed off of him or something. And all these people, they're sort of talking about it and everything. And then there's a woman at the end who's like playing guitar on the street. And when they ask her, she's like, no, I don't support him. I think he's a bad person and he's a rapist. And you went, well, okay. She didn't sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
She didn't talk around it.
Yeah.
She went out there and just said it. And it is an interesting uh, difference between how, because when Conor McGregor was coming up, the Irish people loved him. You couldn't say a word against him. There would be if you mentioned any sort of even just like mild criticism of Conor McGregor, even if you just said how you weren't on the bandwagon, there would be a bunch of angry Irish people in your mentions just motherfucking you up and down.
Yeah.
And now they've turned completely on him in a way that American fans, we don't get behind American fighters quite the same extent. But we also, this probably is a weakness of our society. We have shown we will not turn on you en masse for something like sexual assault. If anything, there are people who seem like they become more fans of you just because they want to push back against what they perceive as cancel culture or something.
Yeah.
But the Irish seems like they have completely shifted on Conor McGregor and are not only not supporting him, they're mad at him because he embarrassed them and humiliated them for having supported him and then turned out to be such an asshole. And it's weird now that was how the UFC pitched him before, was like the entire island is pushing for this guy. He is a national hero. And now, well, really, we don't mention it that much. It's just beloved businessman, loved by many and all, as Long Live Gunu puts it here. That is weird, especially because it's like the base of support that he always had now hates him for the most part.
Yeah. This next one comes to us from Toucan Ham, who writes in to say, guys, have you looked into the backstory of UFC 329 participant and plus 1200 underdog Elisha Ellison? Seems completely like a completely made up character. Number one, first name pronounced exactly like how you think it is. Number two, nickname is the Snack Panther, which we love.
Yeah.
Number three, look at his last two fights before entering the UFC. He fought a guy named Spur Roundstone, which again, these names, and his last pre-UFC fight was at an event called Muckleshoot Fight Night 12. Now, we know about the Muckleshoot Casino. We know all about it. After hearing all of that bullshit information, is the vibes on or off for him against the minus 3,000 Gable Stevenson?
Jesus, minus 3,000.
Do you dare sprinkle some loose $20 change on that? Please discuss. We did talk about the Snack Panther last week over on the Power Hour. But obviously the headline story here, speaking of guys who may not have the best character in the world, the best morals in the world, Gable Stevenson, excuse me, is going out there on Saturday night. 26-year-old former wrestling champion, going to make his UFC debut, probably the most hotly anticipated heavyweight prospect of recent memory. He is indeed going to fight the Snack Panther, who is a huge underdog, which once again, man, if you are Elisha Ellison, obviously you're planning on shocking the world. But I always wonder if back in the back of their mind, you're always like, really? Call me for this one? That doesn't, they're not calling me because they think I'm going to win.
Yeah.
Like it's not really a compliment that they want me to go fight Gable Stevenson, but boy, will they be sorry when they find out.
Yeah, that's got to be what you tell yourself, especially because you're the Snack Panther, right? You got into the UFC after this win over Raphael Brewster at Muckleshoot Fight Night 12. By the way, the win over Spur Roundstone, which is the thing that I think you and I need to take note of. Spur Roundstone, at least according to Tapology, is fighting out of Lame Deer, Montana.
Really? Okay.
He also, though, goes by the nickname Big Sexy. And I'm here to tell you, Spur Roundstone, you're one of the rare fighters. You don't need a nickname.
Yeah.
If your name is Spur Roundstone, that is awesome. That is a memorable name. You don't need to do that. He's fought on some boxing events with some interesting. The event names are interesting. For instance, he fought at one in Davenport, Iowa in 2025, where the name of the show was boy better know.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
He also fought at one that was in Green Bay, Wisconsin, called Kiss Me, I'm Irish. As you can imagine, the posters for these events are incredible. But if you're the Snack Panther, you came into the UFC, you lost your first fight, first round TKO, and they call you up again. They're like, hey, buddy, how you feeling? I'm good. You know what? Octagon jitters. A lot of people have bad first showings in the UFC. I'm a lot better than what you guys saw. And they're going, yeah, no, we know you are, man. We know. Anybody can have a tough first night. We want to get you back in there. And you go, thank goodness. I was just afraid that they were going to see one bad performance from me and think that I didn't have it. I'm glad that they're going to offer me another fight. And who you got? And they go, fellow by the name of Gable Steveson. We don't know if you ever heard of him. And you go, these motherfuckers. You know what they're thinking.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Proverbial chip on the shoulder there. Next question this week comes to us from Marcus Wilberg, who writes in to say, as the diehard football fan, the real kind, you have become, I'm sure you are aware of and upset about the meddling of your president in getting FIFA to overlook its own rules in order to favor the U.S. team. This brings the question, how much power does he wield over the UFC? I have a strong feeling Justin Gaethje has the president to thank for his recent title shot. Should we start to suspect he is also calling up individual judges and referees and telling them what the results should be? First of all, even as Americans, I think we thought that the revoking of a red card suspension in the World Cup, despite the fact that it did seem like kind of a bullshit call, frankly, that was unseemly.
Yeah, and it puts everybody in a bad position, honestly. Like the player himself, like you put him in a tough spot because I at least saw like a headline about him going up to the Belgium coach afterwards to kind of be like, I'm sorry about all this, man. The guy was like, yeah, not your fault. But it's like the U.S. national. You put everybody in a difficult situation, especially because then they go out there and lose, and you went, all right. So you put your thumb on the scale to try to help them, and they still got their asses kicked like that. It's just a bad look for everybody, and it shows you again if you're FIFA, like you thought that there was going to be a percentage in it for you, and finding all these different ways to sort of kowtow to the Trump administration, and it ends up just humiliating you, making you look stupid.
Yeah. And then, as far as involvement in MMA, I feel like we've kind of talked it to death, but just to reiterate, I think the story of Donald Trump being a big MMA fan is partially true, but a lot of the relationship that the UFC has advertised with him is kind of made up. And I don't think he is sitting around sweating the outcome of various fights. He asked to have Derek Lewis on the card, who for some reason is his one of his favorite fighters. I would be very surprised if any of the other matchmaking was done or influenced by the president himself. I feel like the UFC put together this card so it would be exciting, and they would have some knockouts, they would have some performances in front of what they expected to be a huge audience. I don't think the president is probably calling up referees or judges, but with these guys, you can never be too sure. But at the same time, that's not what this is about, man. This relationship with the UFC is about everybody making money and getting power, regardless of what the outcome of the fights are. Those are
Yeah,
immaterial.
I don't think that he would care too much about the outcome. I think I could see that you saying certain fights get made because if Donald Trump was like, I'd like to see this guy fight, they're going to try to turn right around and do it. And like that's exactly what happened with that Derek Lewis thing. Is Trump was like, why isn't Derek Lewis on the thing? He sat there, he watched that Curtis Blades fight for Josh Hokett and was like, I like this guy. Why don't you get one? And then they just went and did it, booked the fight before Josh Hokett could be transported in the ambulance. So I could see absolutely that he might get to influence some of the matchmaking. Certainly, the idea that like he could put pressure referees or officials or anything. We can't hope that the UFC would be the firewall. that would stop him from doing that if he
Yeah.
wanted to. I think that you're right that the thing that would stop him from doing it is he probably just doesn't care that much about the results.
Yeah.
Because especially even this one where Justin Gaethje, there were reports that the UFC was trying to make Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev. That was like the original plan, and Justin Gaethje sort of made sense once he had already won the interim belt, which you could argue the UFC didn't put him in the Paddy Pimblett fight thinking he was going to win that one.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's Justin Gaethje benefiting from Trump privilege.
Last question this week comes to us from Sean Rogers, who writes in to say, John Jones in the past few days has stuck up for Dustin Poirier after his public drunkenness incident and now says that he is proud of Conor McGregor for his return to fighting. Do you think that all of this support from Jones to other fighters is happening because of how badly he hurt Alex Pereira's feelings a few weeks ago? Nope. I think you are asking John Jones to experience way too many emotions, and you are asking him to have way more of a self-awareness, linear way of thinking about his life.
I think we've seen this phenomenon other places. I think that John Jones is more likely to support somebody once there's a bunch of people saying we think maybe that person might be a bad guy, because whether consciously or not, he would like there to be essentially no standard of behavior, so that it makes his own poor behavior seem not an issue. That if you have a whole bunch of people in the UFC running around with, accused of a range of different things, and it is a big range between what Conor McGregor is accused of and Dustin Poirier getting drunk at the airport and acting like an asshole. But if you have a whole bunch of people where, hey, yeah, everybody's a dirtbag, right? Everybody's at least a little bit of a dirtbag, then it makes John Jones look not so much like an outlier for what a dirtbag he's been. So I think that there's a part, that's why you see a whole bunch of people where it's like who are bad guys. When somebody else is accused of being a bad guy, suddenly they become a fan of that person when they didn't give a shit before. So I think that's probably what's going on, even if John Jones himself might not be consciously aware of it.
All right, that's going to do it for listener mail this week. Thanks to everybody who wrote into the show. We really appreciate it. Sorry we couldn't get to more of them. But if you have a question, comment, or concern for future episodes, you can give us a shout over at comainevent.com. Click the link at the top of the page that says email the podcast. That'll get you in touch with us. All right, Ben, we talked in the opening a little bit about what's at stake here maybe for Conor McGregor and Max Holloway. Now I want to talk about the actual fight, because I think that there is a sense out there that Max Holloway, aside from being a known guy, aside from being one of the old heads, right, that you could have had Conor McGregor fight, I think there's a sense that he is also maybe one of the toughest matchups for Conor McGregor, just purely based on how he fights. We know what Max does, right? He's going to come out there and pressure, throw a lot of volume, move McGregor back, try to test his gas tank, which I think for Conor McGregor has always been a little bit of a question mark. And, and then I think on the other side, people think that McGregor, if he's going to win, is going to have to end it early. He's going to have to land one of them big left hands. He's probably going to want to control the center, keep Holloway on the back foot, end it before the pace becomes overwhelming. But I don't know, man, when you just look at where we are both at in our careers here, that kind of seems like a tall order for Conor McGregor.
It does, and yet it's interesting, like we for a long time have looked at Max Holloway and we're waiting for the fall off.
Mm-hmm.
And again, reminder, he's only 34. He's younger. He's the younger man in this fight. It's just that he's been in the UFC for so long, since he was a kid, basically. So it feels like he's been here forever. There's at least some indication that he's been a little more careful about preserving his longevity and how he trains. But he does, when he gets out there and he'll fight an awful lot of rounds, do an awful lot of work, and put some miles on the odometer. So it's reasonable that people are going, one of these times he's got to start showing up and looking like he's not the guy anymore. And yet, when you look at who he's actually lost to, Charles Oliveira exploited a hole in Max Holloway's game, essentially, and legitimate win and everything, but didn't exact. It's not like he went out there and showed that Max Holloway can't fucking fight or anything, and
Yeah.
he did it in a way that Conor McGregor is not likely to replicate. Probably not going to take him down and control him with superior grappling and wrestling and jiu-jitsu. And before that, it was knockout to Ilia Topuria, who was knocking out absolutely everybody. And then it was all that string of losses where it was like, as a featherweight, could nobody beat him except Alexander Volkanovski, who could beat him every time.
Yeah.
And so it's not like we've ever seen him really look bad. We did also see him, just 2 years ago, show up in that BMF fight at UFC 300 with Justin Gaethje and look great.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you get that version of Max Holloway, then it does seem, like you said, a tall order for Conor McGregor. The one thing is that when we've seen Max Holloway have some of his performances where he hasn't quite met up the potential we were expecting, it is usually when he's up a weight class. And here, you're basically up a couple. You're spotting Conor McGregor of some weight here. That seems like that could be the biggest variable that's hard to tell how it's going to play.
Yeah, and for Conor, obviously you come back from the injury, you come back from a long time away where your life basically went into a tailspin and now has been theoretically straightened out. You're going to have a cross on your shorts this weekend just because, our Lord and Savior has pulled him out of the depths of the very unmentionable amorphous things we're going to pretend like we don't know about. But it'll be interesting to see him come back off this long layoff where a lot of weird stuff happened. One of which was we all just went out and admitted he got on some pretty serious steroids and ballooned up to monumental proportions when he filmed the Roadhouse movie, and now is going to come back and make weight here. But I just feel like that adds kind of an additional layer onto the stuff that we are sort of always looking forward to seeing about Conor McGregor, and that being, has he evolved at all? Is he able to still compete with elite fighters in this sport? Does he have the desire to do it? Will ring rust be a factor? So just like there always is, I feel like there's always, and especially in this fight, numerous unknowns for Conor McGregor, the answer to which we'll be looking to see on Saturday night.
Yeah. And that is, here's the number that I saw. I have not exactly fact checked this one, but this is from Home of Fight on Twitter, where they say Conor McGregor will have the third longest layoff in UFC history, and it is 1,826 days.
Wow.
That's a long time just to be off at all. It's a long time, especially when you consider there's a broken leg that was, it's going to set you back some. We've seen people struggle to come back from that. And it's not exactly like you're known for clean living. Those things seem like they're working against you. You also wonder what it's like when you come back. And as we've said, the problem with sometimes being a rich and famous fighter is you end up being the boss of your own camp. And that doesn't always work great.
Yeah.
Those are all like X Factors type stuff that I think don't make me super optimistic about him. But I still think in the first round, being the bigger guy, throwing hard, he's always still dangerous.
Yeah. Max Holloway currently minus 225, Conor McGregor plus 185 in this fight. Man, one of the things about Conor McGregor is he wasn't necessarily looking like he was keeping up with the game at the end of the first time around. You know what I mean? Like he went out there against Dustin Poirier and kind of looked like no one had told him about the calf kick up to that point, looking like Austin Trout's team not telling him about Apollo Creed dying in the movie. Kind of similar with Conor McGregor, gets kicked in the calf and has this look on his face like, what the fuck? Like, you can do that kind of a thing. So now he comes in off this long layoff, which in theory might give him the opportunity to catch up, right? In terms of just how the game works at this point. But I'll be interested to see, because it didn't seem like he was super motivated around this stuff the first time he left. And now you're older and maybe you actually have had this life transformation, but will that at all translate to the cage, or do you come out of this thing looking like that's a gap that you're just not going to close at this point.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not like before when he didn't seem to be catching up with the game. I didn't take it as, well, he's been busy and he hasn't had time. You
Yeah.
know, you could have. I also think that if you get out of the first round in this one, and you know, it would be understandable if maybe your timing is off. You've tried to get your cardio as good as you can, but Max Holloway is just so comfortable in there,
Mm-hmm.
and you haven't been there in a while, and now you're carrying around this extra weight too, and this is you're going in there with a different body than what you've had. I could see cardio really being a factor if you get into round 3, 4, 5 against Max Holloway, who is just going to keep the pressure on and keep a pretty high, steady pace on you. Zero questions there about his cardio. Even Conor McGregor at his peak, there were some questions about his cardio. So that would be a big concern for me if we get into the later rounds and I'm Conor McGregor's camp. I'm probably people looking at each other in the corner and being like, we might want to try to get this one done early.
I talked about earlier in the show that I feel like it would be very huge for Conor McGregor if he wins this fight. On the other side, what if he loses? Does it feel like there is a ton at stake for him to you, aside from, as we all know, better to win the fights than lose them?
Mm-hmm.
And when you do lose them, there is a considerable physical toll to be paid, which is, again, better to not pay that than to pay it. But like, if Conor goes out there and loses to Max Holloway in exactly the way that we think he's going to lose, I wonder if he really loses that much in terms of like panache or marketability, right? Because I think inside the bubble, there will be a feeling of like, well, we knew that Max was a terrible matchup for him. We're not surprised by this. Let's see how he looks in the last one on the contract, or whether or not he signs an extension to the contract. And like I said earlier in the show, it seems like these mainstream people just keep showing up for these name fighters, even though it feels like by the time these guys become name fighters, all they do is lose, right? So I don't know if Conor gets his ass whipped by Max in exactly the way we think it's going to happen. Do you feel like he loses a ton of like momentum, marketability, or worth at all?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about a ton, but I do think there will be some people, kind of like we talked about with other fighters, is given the churn rate of MMA fans, I think that there will be a significant number of people who would come away from this being like, does this guy ever win? I mean, I've heard that he was good, but I haven't seen it. And I think also there will be people ready to be like, okay, so he's done. We've seen the best that he's going to give us, and now you're going to have to go hunting for somebody that he can still beat, and it might be difficult. Like I think that there would be a notable fall off too, but then again, we've seen, kind of as you suggested, one of the most durable ways of being a MMA fighter is to be a cult of personality rather than just I'm the guy who looks incredible and never loses. Look how long the Diaz brothers have been able to keep it up.
Yeah.
So maybe he retains some of that. I do think though some of his flair was always that, like, he's the big ballin' guy who comes in here in the fancy suits, throwing money in the air, knocking people out. And if you're the guy who instead starts to seem like he has been destroyed by wealth and fame, that's a different guy, you know?
Yeah. Well, let's say he loses. Let's say he has two more UFC fights and he loses to Max on Saturday, and then he comes out in whatever fight, the matchup of which we assume would be dictated by what his relationship is like with the UFC at that time. Let's say he doesn't sign an extension. He gets a tough fight in his last bout and loses that one too, and therefore coasts out of his UFC deal on the heels of 4 straight losses, and really having lost 5 out of his last 6, with the only win being that fight against Donald Cerrone at UFC 246 back in January of 2020. Let's say he hits the open market, the free agent market, on the heels of 4 straight losses. I feel like someone is still going to line up to pony up a huge amount of money for him, whether it be for MMA or for some additional like freak show boxing match.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, and especially because it's like they might look at him and be like, well, this is exactly what he's good for now is Netflix boxing, you know? And the UFC might look at it and be like, okay, if you lose to Max Holloway and you don't look great in the process, then there's a good chance that they go, it wouldn't be worth the money to re-sign this guy because the one more fight that you can get out of him, that might be a stretch to get there. And that might be it. So maybe let him go off and do some of that other stuff. Like, I do think that that could have a big effect on whether or not the UFC sees an ongoing value there.
Yeah. If he wins and signs an extension, do you try to boost him into a title shot?
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah.
Because yeah, if those two things happen, the win and the contract extension, Justin Gaethje is going to be like, yes, I'll hang around, I'll wait for that. Give me that one because both guys are going to feel like it's winnable for them in a way that a lot of other people in this division wouldn't be. They'd feel like it would be a big fight, even if there's not points on the pay-per-view anymore. Still, it would put you in a big fight. And a victory over Max Holloway would be just enough justification for the UFC to be like, title fight. Why? Because he's Conor McGregor. That's why.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of agree with you, especially, knowing what the UFC's current priorities are to make fights that they can afford that seem to do relatively good numbers for Paramount Plus. I feel like it's kind of a no-brainer move to do that. If he loses, again, it depends on whether or not he wants to stick around in the UFC, but we could make Michael Chandler's dreams come true if we wanted to. Like Michael Chandler is a Make-A-Wish kid of some kind, and the thing he wants more than anything is to fight Conor McGregor. I saw Paddy Pimblett. Paddy Pimblett will always try to insert himself into these situations. I saw him talking about how he feels like he would be he said he feels like Conor would be a great opponent for him, which is an interesting way to put it. And talking about how his stock only went up from his loss to Justin Gaethje, which I was kind of like, did it though? Saying he thinks that would be a good fight. And I think on its face, I was kind of like, listen to yourself, lad. What are you thinking? What are you saying here? But then when I started to think about it a little bit, I was like, all right, well, if you were only going to get one more fight from Conor McGregor, would you want to give him one that you think he would probably lose, or would you want to give him one that feels like a big spectacle? Because if you wanted to, as kind of crazy as this sounds, or as crazy as it would have sounded a couple years ago, I feel like you could kind of legitimately make a big fight between Conor McGregor and Paddy Pimblett if you were going to do it overseas somewhere. Whether or not that is a UFC priority at all anymore, I don't know. But I don't know. I just saw those quotes, and my first reaction was, "You are a fool, Patty, to think that you would ever have that opportunity." But then when I started to think about it a little bit, I was like, well, depending on how the next few rolls of the dice go, I don't know if that's totally out of the question.
Yeah. And man, that would break Michael Chandler's heart all over again.
Oh God, Mike needs to stop waiting for the train, man. The train ain't coming, Mike.
You're expecting him to go against his very nature. He is an optimist by nature. He cannot help that. He is always going to think that it's going to work out in the end. He'll see you at the top. Mm-hmm. He has to keep telling himself that. If I'm Michael Chandler, honestly, I go, okay, here's the best thing that can happen for me. Max Holloway does indeed box the face off McGregor. He looks bad. They go, oh, shit, we don't know what we can do with this guy anymore. And you go, you know who else doesn't look scary right now to somebody like Conor McGregor? Me. There's a story there and everything. Conor McGregor might be thinking, I could use a win. Let me go in there and get Michael Chandler. Like, that's the best thing you could hope for.
Yeah. Like we said at the top of the show, this is a pretty good fight card, man. Paddy Pimblett, indeed, in the co-main against Benoit Saint Denis, Corey Sandhagen, Mario Batista, Lonnie Kavanaugh, and Brandon Royval, and then King Green and Terrence McKinney in the curtain jerker of the main card. then on the prelim card, Robert Whittaker making his light heavyweight debut. You got Gable Steveson going to make his UFC debut. Cody Garbs is on this thing against Adrian Yanez. So, it's a good all around card. If you have been waiting for one to watch live, and maybe not all the way through, but like considerable portions of it, I'd say this would be a good place to spend your time.
Yeah, and I mean, it's going to be completely ignored leading up to this, but there's interesting stuff on this fight card, and it barely has a chance to register with a lot of people, I think.
All right, that's going to do it this week for the Co-Main Event podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We appreciate the support. We will be all week over on the Patreon page. As we said, we'd love it if you would come over there and join us for that leading up to UFC 329. If you do, that's great. We'll see you tomorrow. And if you don't, we'll see you back here next week. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We appreciate the support. As for right now, we are done. We are through. We are out. What do you think? Patty Pimblett? You want to put him out there? Lad? You want to put the chosen boy out there?
We've seen crazier things happen. You know it. I might put that lad out there. I tell you what, though. You go out there and you book a fight like that, and then you end up doing it in like fucking San Antonio or something because they paid you the site fee. I'm going to be pissed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, over at the Alamo Dome. I don't know if that still exists, but
you'd be like, where should we put this fight between a famous fighter from Ireland and a famous fighter from Liverpool? Think of Salt Lake City.
Yeah, Bakersfield.
Got nothing to do with the fact that they're paying us money to bring them these fights.